Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard. Some of you may be listening to this overnight Thursday. Uploading this Thursday night. Your boy's hoping to kind of take a day off tomorrow. It's a travel day, obviously. But, we'll get some things going in the morning and head on down to Hattiesburg, and we'll go get us a big one with no onions and some frosted root beer mugs. Yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll go down and check out Crescent City Grill for dinner. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. That's the move. And then I want to watch Auburn and Baylor. We'll talk a little more about the SEC weekend on the show. Going to preview the Southern Miss team. Tell you what I've learned. I have studied them extensively this week. Because of the fact it's worthy of our time and effort, because it's an important game for us, because it is game one, but also, too, I'm ready for football season. And I wanted you guys to know what I know. And so I tried to go out there and learn some things and then share them with you on genespage.com and here on the show. You can also now subscribe. We're only going to do this for a few days. 75% off. Yeah, the kickoff special. 75% off the annual subscription price. The genespage.com for a limited time only. And we'll do a cool top 10 list. And then we'll get out of here. We'll make it a fun time. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of football today. And I'm excited about a lot of things that are going on right now. As you guys are well aware, all the stuff, the new enhancements to game day. Like, I think the university did a really good thing by having the media come. That was a savvy move. I don't know who decided that. I don't know if it was Zach Selman or Brandon Langlois or somebody else. It's a smart move because everybody else in the media, myself included, put out these videos. And so you guys kind of get a little bit of a taste of what it's going to be like. And the response has been outstanding. I suspect that everybody else in the media has probably had similar engagement that I have. You guys are jacked. That was smart. Really smart. Hey, it wasn't just let's get everybody there and show them a good time. We know that these people are the messengers to our people, right? And so you bring us in, and the next thing you know, the internet is exploding with commentary about these new enhancements. And, of course, on Wednesday's show, we discussed some of the other enhancements that weren't in the videos, obviously. So I think people are excited. And I made mention to somebody in the administration yesterday. I said, it's really smart for you guys to have us there because your message got out to your fans, your season ticket holders, your donorship, and maybe some people who were on the fence about coming next week. For the first time in a long time, there's some excitement about Mississippi State football. And I think it's not just because of the team and because we've made such an investment. I think a lot of it is people like, hey, this Zach Selman-led administration really cares about football. We're being heard, okay? But not only are we getting the things we want, we're getting some things that we didn't know we wanted, right? We're seeing some upgrades. And I think there has been a shift in the minds of some. They're like, you know what? I think I am going to go to the ball game next week. And that's great. And so it's really smart to do that. I'm going to be honest with you. I think this is probably the most excited our fan base has been, maybe since we got on a plane to head to Phoenix last year to go play Arizona State. We'd taken care of Eastern Kentucky, and we felt good about ourselves. And then, from there, it just, things didn't go well. You lose that game, lose to Toledo, lose to Florida, and lose Blake Shapen in the process. And there just hadn't been a lot of juice. We had a great portal season, A lot of people were excited about that. But there's just something about, having some assurance that this administration is doing their best to kind of take care of football. I just believe that message is being well received. And again, it's so good to see you all be excited because I tell you, I have not been maybe over the moon excited, but I'm always excited for college football season. And I feel like that we're going to be better than some people expect. But the reality of it is sometimes, this summer I'm like, what, I don't want to go through another year, man, where we don't get a chance to enjoy this season. I just don't want that for me or for you or for anybody that loves Mississippi State. I don't want it for our coaches or players. And yeah, I know you've had similar thoughts. You're like, man, I just don't want to have another bad year. I've had back-to-back losing years. I want to get back to a bowl game. I want to be able to feel like I'm moving towards something. And then in the last 48 hours, I've been jacked. I have been. On Sunday, I was so ready to get going, started doing a bunch of Southern Miss research and things like that, wrote a bunch of articles to help you guys prepare for our opponents. But, it's fun to be exuberant. It is. And it's fun to say, you know what? Football is supposed to be fun. College athletics is supposed to be fun. Let's go have some fun. Speaking of fun, Bulldog Burger Company is always a fun place to go eat. Great food, great service, great pricing, great locations, great atmosphere. You can have a great adult beverage if you so desire. I would encourage you to do that in the evening, not maybe on a work lunch, but I'm not judging. But the reality of it is when you need somewhere to go eat, enjoy the meal, get more than you pay for, and then also get an extremely high level of service, look no further than Bulldog Burger Company. 3 great locations to serve you: University Drive in Start Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. If you're not feeling a burger tonight and everybody else is, maybe get that BLT. Yeah, get that BLT salad. I like it grilled. You may prefer it fried. They've got a lot of an assortment of salads on that menu too. I'm not just kind of log jamming you in there. That's my favorite. You may have a different favorite. So go find your own favorites. Look through that menu. And again, if you're a newbie to Bulldog Burger Company, let me encourage you, get the Bulldog. You can't go wrong with the Bulldog. Jacob Bain writes for me, always gets a Bulldog. Like he's found it works for him. He's like, you know what? I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm just gonna get what works. I love the Bulldog Burger from Bulldog Burger Company. And that's going to be my burger of choice. You may be like that too. So you can't go wrong with just that. But I like to sample a little bit of everything. I do. I've always been that way. And so I just kind of move it around every time I go. But you know what? I've been so many times. I've had everything on that menu. Sometimes I get a hankering for what I'm craving. And nothing's going to satisfy that. Like if I'm thinking freshman 15, I got to get freshman 15. If I'm thinking pimentology, add bacon, I got to get that. If I'm thinking DeLorean, the Bryant, I got to get that. I'm thinking smokehouse, I got to do it, right? I mean, my mind is made up before I get there. It's not like I'm not that guy that walks in and has to kind of talk myself into something. I know exactly what I want when I go to Bulldog Burger Company, and you probably do too, right? Be sure and get that chocolate shake, ride that ride home with a smile. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. Okay, let's break down Southern Miss as best we can. Again, no depth chart, but I think in many respects I've kind of pieced it together a good bit, if I can get through my notes here. But, I've got a pretty good idea, I think, of the ones anyway, especially on offense. I think we probably got a pretty good idea about defense too. But obviously, this quarterback situation is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting for them. And what I mean by that is this is a really good test for Mississippi State to see how people with a dual threat / running quarterback are going to attack us. From a team that is still kind of trying to find a sense of itself, right? And that's just being fair. That's not me being critical. I mean, we've been there, right? So I think in many respects, if you're Coleman Hutzler and Jeff Labby, you got to think, this is probably a pretty good situation for us. Sam Levitt at Arizona State, he's a true dual threat guy too. And I don't know that Sam is as athletic as Braylon Braxton is. I think he may throw a better deep ball, but on third and short, I probably would go with Braxton, Deeper into the schedule, play Arkansas. They got a running quarterback, one of the best in the country. And so I think in many respects, this not only gives you a chance to have that palate cleanser, but it gives you a chance to kind of learn some things about your defense to kind of prepare you for perhaps some bigger challenges later in the year, if that makes sense to you. That's how I see it. Now, Braylon Braxton, obviously, a veteran guy, played a lot of football, had a lot of success last year at Marshall, and, rolled on with Charles Huff. And I think it's a good decision. The thing that I think about, too, I think what this kind of illustrates, too, right? Braylon Braxton could have gone to a number of schools and probably been in a position where he would have been the starter this year. But I think the fact that he made the move with Huff and some of his assistants says a lot about Charles Huff. In addition to that, I think it says a lot about the belief in that culture. And, of course, they've got some players that have followed from Marshall to Southern Miss that have had some issues, okay? Not many. Now, I'm not in no way talking about it's a rogue program. It's not the Hattiesburg Raiders, okay? But I think it speaks to the character of Charles Huff a little bit, that a guy that had opportunities to go other places, possibly in the Power Four, said, you know what, Coach, I'm just going to go with you. I think if I'm a Southern Miss guy, and I'm not, but if I was, I would be really encouraged by that. Truly. And I think that's an important aspect of this. But again, this is a true dual threat guy, and I think we're gonna see a ton of RPO, because I don't believe, based on what we have learned about the offensive line this week, and you're even starting to get some Southern Miss people that have been kind of open about that. That's their biggest concern, and rightfully so, right? You got Eric Notary back, really the only regular from a year ago. And there's talk now that he's going to flip from right tackle to left, all 6'3", 310 of him. He's really kind of more of a guard playing tackle. And that's not being critical, right? That's just kind of how life works, right? Some guys are built to play guard. Some guys are built to play tackle. He really has more of that square body type. He's a guy that we've known for a while. He came up from Macomb High School. Was in JUCO in the Mississippi Junior College system, and has made the most of his opportunities, and is the veteran guy in that group. And but they're talking about playing him at left. I mean, the math doesn't really work out well for him, especially on the blind side. So that's going to be a very important thing. And I think the fact there's a few little things that you don't know that I'm about to illustrate to you, but. The fact that you flip your right tackle to your left tackle, what that tells me is you want to put your best tackle at left because you've got a right-handed quarterback. And the fact that they're taking a guy that was basically their regular starter at right tackle and moving to left tackle tells me that the guys they brought in from the portal are not capable of handling that at this point, if that makes sense. Now, we know that Maui, as they call him, is going to man one of the guard spots, and I understand that he has played some right and some left, and he makes a lot of the calls. Pretty settled at center. What they do at right tackle kind of remains to be seen. But here's something that I've learned just this week. Southern Miss has added another 2025 class member, another offensive lineman. As I share with you guys on Wednesday's show, the fact that they're having to mix and match 10 days out before game day tells me that they're not comfortable or confident in what they got. And now all of a sudden you're going and adding another guy. And again, no disrespect to the guy, right? He'd be a fool not to take that opportunity, right? But you got to figure, what were his options at this late juncture, right? I think, to me, it's kind of a 3-alarm fire, maybe not 4, but kind of a 3-alarm fire if I'm a Golden Eagle about this offensive line, that we're having to add bodies the week of the game now because of the acclimation process. He won't be a factor this weekend. But the reality of this is this, I think, is probably the personnel group where State is substantially better, which is amazing considering how bad we were on the defensive line last year, right? I think this offensive line from Southern Miss will gel as they move forward, right? But the reality of it is they're getting ready to play a team that is much bigger and faster and stronger. with kind of a makeshift offensive line, they're having to kind of mix and match and bring in additional players. That's not to say that once they clear Mississippi State, they won't figure some things out. They're going to win some games in their league. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You know, they got Alcorn coming in, I guess in week 2. They'll win that game. I mean, I could see Southern Miss chasing a bowl game just because of Charles Huff and his staff's knowledge of the league and the fact that you got arguably the most dynamic playmaker in the league at quarterback. And that's going to count for something. But they're going to be as good. And Blake Anderson said this, and I wrote about this today. We're going to be as good as they let us be, talking about that offensive line. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball between the tackles. I think they're going to work the edges, which is what I would do too. You know, if you don't think you can block them, you better find a way to get around them. And I think when you've got a mobile quarterback like that and you got Jeffrey Pittman, I don't know if I wouldn't work in some option game, right? Some speed option stuff just to get him outside and give him some room to roam and put some impact. And we do expect Jeffrey Pittman to be RB1. I think we shared that on Wednesday. Pretty confident we did. But, you know, the depth chart behind him is interesting. And I share that because I think it's worth noting that they've got a second-team running back and a third-team running back, but that really doesn't mean a whole lot. They're going to play them by committee and kind of situationally. You know, so like if you hear, well, this guy's a number 2 back. Well, the number 2 back has got a completely different skill set than the number 1 and the number 3, right? And so, and it's interesting. Jeffrey Pittman didn't play last year, obviously. That was some of the big news early last year before the season started, is that Jeff wasn't going to be with us. And, again, I don't know all the details behind the situation, but I do trust Jeff Lebby's judgment and, you know, wish everybody the best, right? But Robert Briggs out of Bellevue, Texas, 5'9", 185 pounds. And this guy's a legit 4'4" guy. Legit. I've seen some other numbers thrown out there. I don't believe them. But he got his leg broken against Robert Morris in game 1 last year. So I think 9 carries. Yeah, 9 carries for him in all of last year, and then coming back from a broken leg. And then Jeffrey didn't play at all. Matt Jones was a reserve at Ole Miss. He's now a redshirt senior. He had 44 carries. So the top 3 backs combined in the Southern Miss running attack had 53 in-game carries last year. That's it. So they've got talent, but last year, not much in the way of production. Now, I'm sure they're going to want to make up for lost time, right? And, you know, they're going to treat this game like a Super Bowl, you know. I mean, they are, and they should. But maybe you're a little more careful with Briggs. And, again, he's 5'9", 185. Matt Jones, 6 foot 202. You know, so Pittman is, to me, you know, based on what I have watched, and I watched that Robert Briggs injury, and that guy was on a long run too. And when he got the corner, he turned on the gas. The guy's really fast. So he's the guy that could pop, right? And there's not a lot of film on him from last year. And he was the guy, obviously, that was at Utah State, recruited there when Blake Anderson was there. The receiver room is interesting. And I say that because, you know, there's the 5 receivers that came in from Marshall, but I don't expect all 3 of the starting wide receivers to be all Marshall guys, right? And the reason I say that is because Micah Davis is in there from Ole Miss, and we're hearing that he is going to be one of the starting receivers. And then there'll be some formational stuff. Chuck Montgomery, of course, did some good things for Marshall last year, Carl Chester. But Braylon Brown is a real dude. 6'2", 205, out of Miramar, Florida, a product of St. Thomas Aquinas. He'll be one of your starters. So that first time Southern Miss has the ball, look for Micah Davis, Braylon Brown, and then We'll see. Again, I think it'll probably be, Montgomery, could be Chester, but it could be any number of guys, just kind of dependent on down and distance. And, Davis Dalton's a guy, too, that we know, right? You're good friends with our buddy Blair Chandler. The dads are friends. But out of MRA, and he was a guy that, I heard some people talking that he was a guy early on they weren't quite sure what to expect, but he's really stood out to them, and he's running second team. But they've got some talent at wide receiver. But it's my cousin Chuck said the other day, and please, this is an old school coaching euphemism, right? So please don't send me any messages crying about this. It's just a euphemism. But basically, if you have an All-American running back and then you have an offensive line of cheerleaders, they're not going to accomplish anything. But if you have an All-American offensive line, you could put a cheerleader at running back and they'd run for 1,000 yards, right? It all has to start up front. It's all complementary football. I mean, years and years and years, Dallas Cowboys didn't have great running backs but had great offensive lines, and they were able to just kind of pave their way into some wins. It's been a long time since they won a Super Bowl, but you get my drift. And so that's kind of the thing, and in no way am I saying that Southern Miss is playing cheerleaders on the offensive line. That's not what I'm suggesting. There's some hyperbole in all of that. But to understand here, this offensive line has some real challenges, and there are some talented backs behind them, but can they pave some path for these guys to run? And I think they're going to really struggle on the interior. So I expect a ton of RPO and some option-style stuff just to get the ball out in space. They'll probably bubble up a little bit too, try to get the wide receivers involved, kind of that long handoff there. Tight end, obviously, I don't know if you guys kept up at all, but Kyron Heath is a former Ole Miss Rebel. He transferred to Southern Miss last year and really kind of emerged as a guy they could count on. 6'5", 240. Great catch radius, too. And so he's kind of a walking mismatch. If he gets paired up with a safety, makes it awfully tough. He's a little more fleet of foot than many linebackers, maybe not in the SEC, but it's certainly in their league. And they went out and added a couple other guys, too. They got numbers now, but Heath is the guy to really watch. And he's out of Mansfield, Texas, Legacy High School out there. Flipping over to defense, you didn't have 13 transfers come in from Marshall to not play them, right? And so we'll start up front, and of course there's only one regular back along the defensive line for Southern Miss, as you guys are certainly aware by now. I'm sure you've all done your research and you've read the articles and listened to the show and things like that. You probably know as much about that team as many of your Southern Miss friends do. But, one of the top interior defensive linemen in the Sun Belt Conference last year, called Hattiesburg home. That's Broderius Lewis. And he's the guy, too, that benefited from the Pavia ruling because he spent a couple years in junior college. He's out of Prattville, Alabama. And so he gets the extra year, just like Davin Booth did. Went through senior day festivities last year, thought that was the end of the road, gets another year. And this is 6'2", 295. But I'll tell you this, he doesn't look like a near 300-pounder. And I mean that in the best way possible. He carries the weight really well. He's athletic. Yes, he has some width and some girth to him. But for a bigger guy, he really moves well. And so we expect him to be there on the interior. In addition to that, we do expect to see, some of these Marshall guys kind of jump their way in there. Isaiah Gibson, as they call him, Gibby, 6'4", 320. Going to be lined up, and they run the 4.25, right? They run the 4.25, and again, they do some exotic things from time to time, but they believe, listening to Coach Seahorn speak, they think that Isaiah Gibson is an NFL prospect. Now, Jabari Ishmael is 6'6", 270, really more of a true 5-tech, right? And so he gives them some length and some girth. And again, these are guys, many of these guys were pretty highly recruited out of high school. At least his first team was. But, yeah, that's going to be some length on the end. I don't know exactly what they're going to do at the edge. But they got some options for sure. Jamon Tapp is a guy that we recruited extensively, you may recall, out of Ascension Catholic. Transferred into Southern Miss from Arizona State. And he has not played a lot of college football. So we'll see what happens with him, how they utilize him. I am certain that he will play, and certainly probably play pretty well once they get into the Sun Belt. But it's interesting to kind of go back and look at all this stuff. He was at Arizona State for a year, didn't play. He was at Texas for 2 years, did some decent things out there, but he transfers out to Arizona State and then can't get on the field. And that's one of those things you kind of wonder about just a little bit. What's the scenario there? We'll find out. A guy that they have talked about extensively, obviously, is Josh Moten. And I've had multiple people in the industry tell me that he is Southern Miss's best pro prospect without question. Guy had a huge year last year at Marshall. Mississippi State chased him, tried to get him to come here. Didn't work out. Elected to go stick with Huff and Braylon and those guys. And you know what? I kind of respect that. Would love to have had him in maroon and white. We could certainly have used him. But there's a part of me that respects that. Sticking with my guys, right, and going out there kind of making some things happen. What's interesting to me, we talk about the nickel, talk about Isaac Smith and players of that caliber, and in the 4.25 and Seymour, I thought explained it really well to the media down there earlier this year, is you're going to have some guys that can do a little bit of everything. You're going to have some guys that can make things happen. And that's kind of where they are with their nickel. They feel, really good about where things sit in that respect. They feel like they've got a playmaker. Ian Foster is his name. And, again, redshirt sophomore, 5'10", 195 pounds out of Brundage, Alabama. They seem to believe that this is a guy that can be a difference maker for them. Transferred in from Marshall. Redshirted in 23, but had a really good year last year, mainly as a kick returner. But they believe that, he's a guy that's going to be a star for them. So he plays nickel, and they got some other pieces, back. Not much in that secondary. Brendan Tolles, former state commitment, is back, but he has been primarily a rotation guy. But it'll be interesting to kind of see how they kind of flesh out the rest of that secondary. But again, you sign so many of these defensive backs from Marshall, you got to feel like you're going to play guys and guys you have a relationship with, which, as you should. Right? You signed them because you liked them, and now you've signed them twice, so you clearly like them a lot. But they're people that obviously have embraced your system, because if they weren't where they needed to be, you'd have left them in Marshall. Now, we've talked about Chris Jones a couple times. Chris out of Byram, Hartfield Academy, going to play will linebacker, going to play a little bit more in space, and 6 foot 230, but man, he looks like what you want a linebacker to look like. I mean, you may want him to be a little bit taller, but he is absolutely jacked. This is a guy that loves contact. They've praised his work ethic. Kind of playing behind him will be Avery Sledge, former Bulldog, 6'2", 220. Kind of fits the demographic. And Michael Montgomery, a transfer from Portland State, expected to be the Mike linebacker at 6'4", 250. A little bit beefy. A guy that can fit gaps a little bit better. And then behind him is Mathis Haygood at 6'3", right at 230, another guy that came from Marshall. And so that's pretty much your two deep at backer, and that kind of takes you through, what we kind of expect to happen on the defensive line. Mason Clinton, former Bulldog out of Petal High School that we signed out of Scuba last year, running with the twos on the defensive line based on what we've been told. And so that's kind of how I see this team taking the field. But I think it's important to understand that front line is going to have some, going to have some girth. They're going to have some size. They went out and signed some bigger guys out of West Virginia too. but they don't appear to be challenging for first-team spots, which is interesting, But they are guys, obviously, that have been through a Power 4 strength and conditioning program. So we'll see. But, on paper, you would say, this defensive line has a chance to be good. And they do have some size with that first group. They got some size with the second group, but obviously those guys, if Mason Clinton's running with them, and all due respect to Mason, but if Mason's running with the twos, that tells me that maybe some of those guys that came in from the portal maybe aren't as advertised. But, we're going to have to go out there and play football. Simple as that. But I just don't think the depth favors them, really, on either side of the line. And one of the things that I think is important, too, is with this Southern Miss offensive line being a little bit shaky, as we expect, for a defensive line that got gashed last year, this is kind of what the doctor orders, right? A chance kind of wash the slate clean, and you go out there and you compete against, again, an offensive line that's kind of finding, as Charles Huff said, get guys in the right seats, right? Game one is always a learning experience every season, but certainly with a new coach, with new terminology, a new way of doing things, there are always some first-game jitters. That's just kind of how things work. State has the benefit of having a lot of guys in year two, especially the quarterback, Blake Shapen. But on the flip side, Braxton has been in this system for a while at Marshall. And even though it's a lot of new teammates around him, he's going to be comfortable in what he does. We got to make him uncomfortable. We got to make sure we use their issues with the offensive line to make him uncomfortable. But I've shared with you guys before, I expect to win this game. I expect to cover. I think this game could get away from Southern Miss in the fourth quarter because of Mississippi State. I expect our ability to run the football. We're going to need Phil Oldholt and those guys to just kind of take over. I think you got to come out and establish the run. That pulls the safeties up into the box. You get some advantageous matchups outside the numbers. You take some shots down the field, and you get some separation in the game. And then in the second half, hopefully you can maintain that separation and turn it over to the running game and kind of put this thing away and kind of shorten the game and get on out of there with the dub. I know many of you are like, Steve, I just want to win by 1 point. I just want to win, but I would like to get some style points too. I think our fan base needs that. I think we as a fan base and as a program need some real enthusiasm going into week 2 against Arizona State in the home opener. But again, still thousands of tickets available through the Southern Miss ticket office unless they've had a big run today. Looks like you should be able to get tickets on into game day. We'll see. I would advise you, if you plan to come, to go ahead and get them online from the Southern Miss ticket office and kind of be done with it. And I think there's still maybe 100 tickets left in Mississippi State. I think that's right. But if you're on the fence about coming, we encourage you to come on. There is expected to be some light precipitation. Not much. So maybe bring a poncho just to be on the safe side. But, yeah, I expect State to win this game and cover. And I do think this is a game that could get away from them. And if we don't turn the football over, I think State's going to be in really good shape. And come Monday, we're going to feel really good about where we are. All right, so let's get to our Close with Blair player of the day. It's always so interesting coming up with these. It's true. If you don't know Blair Chandler, you should. He is our friend in the mortgage industry. Don't overthink it. Stick with an experienced pro. That's Blair Chandler, 601-500-2344. For many people, the dream of home ownership has eluded them, and you'd like to be able to put some roots down somewhere. We talk about building generational wealth and things of that nature. If Tom Kiefer taught us anything from Cinderella, it's, put your money in a big house, get yourself a pretty wife. You know the rest, but I'm sure Blair, that song's probably a little bit too rocking for him, but nonetheless, he's a jam band guy. We won't hold that against him. But serious business, you do not want to entrust your mortgage to just anybody. Blair, a couple years ago, made the move to Priority One, doing a great job there. The same level of service accompanied him. So whether you're looking for your first home, your next home, or your retirement home, or perhaps that game day condo, let Blair Chandler work for you. it's worked for many others. We've had several Boneyard listeners that have closed loans with Blair and had rave reviews about his service. Get his 24 years of knowledge and expertise working for you, and he is a bulldog through and through and a personal friend of mine. I wouldn't recommend him if I didn't believe in him. That's Blair Chandler at closeofblair.com. Okay, our Mississippi State Player of the Day going to be Albert Reese. He has been the subject of some scrutiny here as of late among the fan base about him playing left tackle. Here's what I would say about that. Number one, Albert won the whole trophy last year. And yes, I get it. Some people think maybe he should be a guard, whatever. But I'm putting my trust in Jeff Lebby, who was an offensive lineman that signed with Oklahoma, had an injury, couldn't compete. Phil Lodeholt is the offensive line coach. Phil Lodeholt knows what Jeff Lebby wants and what makes this offense work. He's also a guy that played at the highest level of football. And so I'm going to put my trust in them and the fact that Albert Reese has been a pretty consistent performer for us. But, hey, it took a little while to get going. But the reality of it is this. I believe Mississippi State is going to come out and try to really establish the run. I think Albert can help us do that. And so if it doesn't work, we move, right? But, Albert has been a good Bulldog through and through. There's not a lot of Bulldogs that have been with us their entire career. That is the case for one Albert Reese, and we appreciate his loyalty to our fine program and trust in his abilities to go out there and do a good job for us. So, again, Albert Reese, your Close with Blair Player of the Day. All right. Time for today's top 10 list, and this is a fun one. We're going to give some love to some Mississippians today. So our top 10 list is going to be people that have connections to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Okay? I lived in Hattiesburg twice. One of those times was when I was trying to be a musician. One of these bands I know, they were in the scene around the same time. But there's a new band I wanted to kind of shout out to. It's a little different. It's a band called MS Paint. And some of you may have a connection to them. I want to show some love to this next generation of Mississippi musicians and see if we can't help them. This may be something that you like. They've got a 5-song EP out. And listen, there's a couple of tracks on there pretty interesting. My favorite one is Angel by MS Paint. MS Paint, based out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So again, maybe if you guys know them, let them know we showed them a little love on the show. I don't know what university they're aligned with, but I know that they're guys that are just trying to make it in a very difficult industry, and we should look after our own. So again, shout out to MS Paint. Angel, your number 10 song today on the top 10 list. Number 9, going back to the years of Tal's Dart Bar. Eventually it changed to Tal's Music Emporium. We affectionately called it Tal's Music Aquarium. There was a time in my life that my lovely bride tended bar at Tal's. It was pretty much kind of beer tending, right? I guess, she did learn to do a few things. But, in a college town, you sell a lot of beer. We didn't have spiked seltzers back in those days. Either you got beer or you got like a wine cooler. It was a little different time. It was. But one of the bands that we loved, that we thought had some cool things going, and they were cool guys too. It's a Eulogy of the Dog, and their music is on iTunes now. They had a little EP, and I remember everywhere you went in Hattiesburg for a while there, people from my generation that didn't have a lot of respect for other people's personal property put eulogy stickers all over town because they were Hattiesburg boys and we wanted to support our friends. And probably my favorite song, original track from them, was Jesus Has Long Hair Too. I think you'll enjoy that one. And kind of a song about, it's so interesting. I just went back and listened to it, and it's like it could have been released today because of the subject matter of the lyrical content. But Eulogy, those guys were super cool guys. And, of course, there's always some comings and goings in the band. And, we had Stretch Armstrong, bands like that. I mean, Tal's was a lot of fun. I enjoyed going to Tal's Dart Bar. And, we saw some great bands there. We did. We had a little bit of a scene back then. Number 8, and this is lower not because of the notoriety of the song, but because they say this gentleman lived in Hattiesburg for a while, and perhaps he did. I don't know that for sure. But, yeah, we're going to talk about it. But it's Afro Man's I Got High. And a lot of people know who that is. And, it's one of those things, too, that it's a song that maybe is not very politically correct, but it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, And so that's your song. Number 7, I believe this gentleman won a Grammy. I think that's correct. He is from Hattiesburg, and he's played with Bobby Rush and a lot of very accomplished blues musicians, but it's Vasti Jackson. And we're going to go with Mississippi. That track, it's a fun track. It just came out a couple years ago. He's still making music. He's still alive, doing some cool stuff. If that's your brand of music, I think you'll enjoy that. And again, shout out to somebody from South Mississippi doing something great in music. Number 6, somewhat unfamiliar with this guy, but part of Blue Mountain, I think, the name of the band. But it's Carrie Hudson. And this song, I think, kind of jumps out. It's also kind of fits our theme today, but it's Mississippi Country Girl, and he also shouts out the Pearl River, a place that I know well as it runs through Columbia. There's a lot of country girls out near that river, I can promise you. And I mean country all the way. And it's so funny, the people in Foxworth called the guys from Columbia city slickers. I don't go date some city slicker. We wanted to date those country girls, though. We did. They were extremely cooperative. But the cool thing about those girls across the river, too, is, they had kind of that small town charm about them. It's true. And some of them, their biggest dream was to move from Foxworth to Columbia, or maybe Hattiesburg. So Mississippi Country Girl from Carrie Hudson, number 6. Number 5, this guy's done some good things. Jake Austin Walker, TV, movies, music, a lot of cool stuff. Some pop stuff here. Jake Austin Walker, we're going with the track Suffer. And uses a little bit of the falsetto in it. I think you'll have fun with it. And again, I don't know what schools that these musicians are aligned with. I just know that they're Mississippians. And we are the birthplace of America's music. And so we're going to support each other. Number 4, this track was recorded and was a huge hit from Tim McGraw, Live Like You Were Dying. However, it was written by Craig Wiseman, who's had like 26 number 1 hits from the Berg. Yeah, how about that? A lot of cool stuff. He's had, Dolly Parton and others have recorded his songs. There's a lot of people that can't sing well that are great songwriters. And I don't know if Craig can sing or not, but he has made a career out of being a country music songwriter. It's good work if you can get it. Number 3, I got a personal connection to this one. I do. And I don't know if it was The Voice or American Idol. I can't remember which. But I remember sharing all those Facebook posts asking for votes. So I used to be confused at times with a guy who was like my age but a grade beneath me, a redheaded guy by the name of Steve Dickerson. My name was Steve Robertson. Still is. I assume Steve's name is still Steve Dickerson, too. A lot of people back in those days called me Steven. That's what school teachers called you when they called roll the first day of school. But my friends called me Steve. Dickerson kind of had the same affliction, right? But Dickerson had a son named Tyler, and I guess he still does, Tyler Dickerson, who made it a long way on one of these national recording shows. And I've actually met Tyler, great young man, and had a single called Tell Your Sister I'm Single. That's about as South Mississippi as it gets there, boys. But the vocal delivery on it is great. And again, I don't like that song better than Live Like You're Dying. But because of the fact that this is a guy that's got roots to Columbia, Mississippi, we're going to move him up on the list a little bit. And maybe you'll have some fun with that track too. Number 2, And this is legendary, right? I mean, this is one of those things a lot of people in these new generations don't know. But of course, everybody knows about the Delta blues and things of that nature. One of the guys that was really involved in the South Mississippi blues scene was Blind Roosevelt Graves, and did a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, he was involved with it was kind of like a who's who. And there are some people that say that kind of, in some respects, some of the early seeds of rock and roll were planted by Blind Roosevelt there in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. But we're going to go with, could go a lot of different directions here. We could. We're not going to. But we're going with Hitting the Bottle Stomp. That's going to be your number 2 track, Hitting the Bottle Stomp. But number 1, who else could it be? It's got to be Jimmy Buffett, right? Southern Miss graduate from Pascagoula, Mississippi, one of the greatest musicians the state of Mississippi has ever birthed. And we're going to go with Margaritaville just to kind of give you something of familiarity, because most of these songs are going to be unfamiliar to you, most of them. But again, I wanted to do something to celebrate Mississippi's music and to celebrate musicians and songwriters from my neck of the woods. And even though some of these guys may not necessarily be from the burg, like Corey Hudson's from Sumrall, and if you know anything about Sumrall, it's basically a wooded suburb of Hattiesburg. It is. I dated a girl from Sumrall too, and a girl from Midway. For those of you that are around the Olo community, I dated a girl from Midway. Yeah. But nevertheless, anytime that we can celebrate our state's music, I think it's a great thing. And of course, again, I go back to MS Paint. I mean, these guys are just young guys with a dream. I don't know them. I don't have any connection to them. I just know they're doing some things that I think are somewhat interesting and probably worthy of a little support, And I like, what, Band of Horses out of Hattiesburg too? Good band too. Probably should have included them. But saw them at Dave's Dark Horse one night. And then a buddy of mine, Sebastian Blanchard from back home, I hadn't seen him in forever, he went and saw him play at Key West. Super cool, man. I also had somebody hit me up about the PMRC stuff. And it's PMRC, Parents Music Resource Center. We did a top 10 of the Filthy 15, as they called them. And they were kind of curious, like, who were some of the other bands. You'd be surprised. I'm going to run them down for you real quick here. Prince was on there for Darling Nikki. And then, of course, Sugar Walls from Sheena Easton, also written by Prince, made the list. And it was, it was a lot of, let's say, suggestive content. Judas Priest, Eat Me Alive, was also on there from the Defenders of the Faith. There's a lot to that one. And then Vanity. And Vanity, at some point, she was called Vanity Six, and then she married Nikki Sixx for a while. Of course, she was a kind of a Prince creation, and incredibly beautiful. But she had. I'm not even going to say the name of the song. You can go look up yourself, just because I want to keep it, PG-13. And then Motley had a song on there, of course, and it was about a manager of theirs, some violent lyrics, But Vince Neil had a great quote about it. Said, once you put that sticker on, the parental warning sticker of the album took off. The kids wanted it even more, and there was some truth to that. Number 6, AC/DC's Let Me Put My Love Into You. Twisted Sisters, We're Not Gonna Take It, which is so stupid. It was just like they were trying to say, hey, this is about violence. It's not. Madonna's Dress You Up. Yeah, that made it too. Dress you up in my love all over your body. That's right. It's so silly. And of course, Wasp, as we mentioned, was on there. Def Leppard's High and Dry was on there because of references to alcohol. So stupid. I got my whiskey, I got my wine, I got my woman, and this time the lights are going out. Right? It's just, that's what we're upset about. Merciful Fate, Into the Coven. Yeah, that was kind of part of it back then. Of course, King Diamond, was the singer of Merciful Fate. Black Sabbath, trashed. It's a wonder that Suicide Solution didn't make the list. And then 13, Mary Jane Girls, In My House, a Rick James joint. They made the list. And then Venom's Possessed. And if you go back and look at the lyrics, you can see why. And then Cyndi Lauper's She Bop, which is about having some quality alone time. So you see, they didn't really discriminate. A lot of people from both rock and roll and pop music made the list, but it was an interesting time in our country, And again, I'm a First Amendment advocate. I think one of the most important songs in our nation's history is "Banned in the USA" by Two Live Crew. I do, and if you have that CD single, "The First Amendment," it was printed on the cover, and it was incredible what they put those guys through, and they put the stickers on there, and then of course, so. Luther Campbell and his group, the Two Live Crew, they had their album As Nasty as They Want to Be. And then they did a clean version called As Clean as They Want to Be. So they took every precaution. They didn't let people come to shows that were under the age of 18. And they were still vilified by many people because they said, hey, this is obscenity. Well, who decides what's obscene and what's not? What may be offensive to you may not be offensive to me. And that's, if anything, we've learned in the last 5 years is that there's some people that are going to get offended over anything. And it's so crazy. Like back in those days, anybody that really advocated for free speech was kind of considered a bit of a Bolshevik. It's like, how dare you challenge kind of the religious right about this? And then now you look at it today, there are a lot of people that still want to cover up offensive speech. And my attitude about that is, as I've told you guys on the show before, I think you should be able to say whatever you want. That doesn't make you free from consequences, though, however. But the federal government cannot, nor should not, have any ability to penalize you for your First Amendment speech. And a lot of that, if you recall, was, dissenting voices against the government. That's what it all kind of came from. Because one of the reasons that we left England in the first place is because we were truly oppressed over there. Now, I don't mean this oppression today where, you went to go get a bagel or something and they forgot to put a napkin in the bag. I don't mean that kind of oppression. I mean like real oppression, where if you spoke out against King George, you could be beheaded. That sort of oppression. Listen, I know. But the fact that we in America have the ability to have free speech is very important. You look at what's happening in England now, right? People will say things on Facebook that the government doesn't agree with, and they'll go arrest them. We have the whole flag burning thing, right? That all started when I was a teenager, when it became like a big thing. Like, it was one thing, like, for foreign nationals to burn the American flag, but then when Americans started burning the flag, people were like, wait a minute here, we need to look at this. Do you know in many countries around the world, and I think it's more than 50, if you burn the flag of that country, you will go to prison. Isn't that crazy? And so I say all those things to say this, that there are a lot of people that are in America that don't understand how good we have it. Does that mean that we don't have any problems? No. We got a lot of things we still got to fix and work towards. But the narrow view of our country in the eyes of many is really only hurting themselves, right? But I'm a person that enjoys my freedom. I've had it taken away from me before, and I delight in the freedoms that we enjoy here. I'm a firm believer in everybody should have civil rights and that everybody should have the ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. I believe all those things to be self-evident. I'm not going to sit here and recite the Gettysburg Address or anything, but when we start kind of getting loose and fast with our own rights and being willing to kind of give those things up, we're just asking for trouble. We fought a revolution to have these things. And do some people maybe push the envelope? You better believe it. But again, it's not friendly speech that needs protection. It's offensive speech that needs protection. And we have a constitutional right to say, sing, or perform those things. It's true. It's a freedom that many people in the world don't enjoy. It's true. Do your own research and you'll find out for yourself. Guys, I love watching TikTok, but some of you watch so many of these TikTok political commentary videos from somebody that doesn't know any more than you. They just bogart somebody else's stuff. And you get TikTok brain. Go find reputable media sources, and I know that's more difficult today than at any point in human history because everybody seems to have an inherent bias against something. But we live in a great country. And again, we've got problems that we've got to continue to work hard to correct. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But don't ever surrender your freedoms. And don't ever act like these things aren't important just because you don't fully appreciate the fact, the freedom, the quality of freedom with which you live in a great country like the United States. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. We love Campus Bookmart. We do. And we love them because they have the things we want. Satisfy all of your Mississippi State merchandising needs at Campus Bookmart. Next time you're in town, stop by and see their smiling faces. They have the latest in maroon and white apparel, gift ideas, everything you need to detail out your fan cave. You certainly need that. You do. I know people say, well, we spent too much money. No, we did not spend too much money on our Mississippi State stuff. We did not. We need to rep the brand whenever possible. When people come to break bread at your house, they should know where your allegiance lies. Be sure and be proud Bulldogs. You can get cowbells there, all sorts of good stuff. You'll be glad you did. If you can't make it to town, or perhaps game day is not a good shopping day for you, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That's BSR. That's right. Stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. Gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. All right, let's look around the SEC. We'll kind of pick the weekend. As you guys are probably aware, I am recording this Thursday evening, so the Missouri Central Arkansas game is in progress. We do expect Missouri to win that handily. Now, Friday night, and I'll be watching this somewhere in Hattiesburg, I suspect at a friend's house, but Auburn at Baylor. I picked Baylor to win this game. Auburn is actually a slight road favorite, but we're going to go with Baylor. And the reason why is I just think Sawyer Robertson is a better quarterback than Jackson Arnold. I think Sawyer Robertson, being in that system for multiple years, will give him the opportunity to put up just enough points. And I know that Auburn defense is supposed to be pretty salty. I just don't know if Auburn can score. Dave Aranda, kind of a defensive guru, I'm sure that he'll have a great game plan. 7 p.m. is your kick. That's on Fox. It'll be a fun Friday night event. Now, there are 3 Saturday morning games, as you guys are aware. Mississippi State, Southern Miss, you know my feelings about that one. Syracuse at Tennessee. Big spread, but I'm going with Tennessee. And listen, I think there's a possibility that Syracuse may cover just because of the fact there's a lot of moving parts to this Tennessee offense. Got a brand new quarterback in there making his first start, and I know that he did some things at UCLA, so he's not going to be intimidated playing at home at Neyland Stadium. But I won't be surprised if Syracuse covers, but we do believe pretty confidently Tennessee will win this game. Now, the fun one that doesn't involve us, Texas and Ohio State. Yes, Ohio State won the national championship last year. Texas, obviously, had a huge year. But I'm going to go with Texas. On the road, I just think Texas, from a skill position standpoint, can challenge that Ohio State secondary. I have said for years, I think Ohio State is the most SEC caliber quality team north of the Mason-Dixon line. They typically have elite skill offensively and defensively. But I think Texas is going to put them in a situation where they're going to get some matchups, and Sark has kind of proven himself to be a great coach there. So we'll see what happens. Number 1, Texas at Ohio State. What a great game to kind of get us going. Now, you got to DVR that one because you got to watch Mississippi State. But maybe our game will be in hand late. You can flip over and see the end of that game. But should be a good one. Toledo's at Kentucky. I took Kentucky to win and to cover here. Toledo last year, kind of a veteran team. We'll see what happens with them this year. Jason Candle, it's interesting that he's still there. It'll be interesting to see at year's end if Mark Stoops is still there. He has lost a big segment of that fan base. He came to terms with Texas A&M, and the next thing you know, there was like blood in the streets. And they had to revisit that. And then, of course, Kentucky finds out about it. It's tough to go back, right? It's tough to go back. It truly is. It's almost like cheating in a relationship. And I understand you're trying to better your situation, but Stoops, I think, maybe felt like he had done everything he could do at Kentucky, and perhaps he has. They're not forecasted to do exceptionally well this year, but I think they do enough to win this game. If Toledo beats Kentucky, I think it's a death march for Mark Stoops. I think you're just counting down the games because I think there's enough acrimony there in Lexington, Kentucky that people would support a changing of the guard. And I think John Summerall down at Tulane, obviously a former Kentucky player, would be the first name on that list. Marshall, a completely gutted Marshall team in many respects, will travel to Athens. Georgia ranked number 5 in the country. Georgia expected to cover here. Now, Nate Purvis picked Marshall to cover. I like Georgia to win and cover in this one. That's going to be the 2:30 a.m. game, 2:30 p.m. game, on ESPN. That'll follow our game. It's interesting, right? Charles Huff in the morning and then his former team in the afternoon, both on ESPN. Alabama and Florida State, that'll be a fun one too. We'll probably listen to that on the way back to Stark Vegas after we get all of our post-game content up for you guys. So number 8, Alabama at Florida State. I'm taking Alabama. Some people believe that they have the most talented roster in the country. Now, last year, they had a talented roster too, and they dropped some games they shouldn't, namely that Vanderbilt game. Talent doesn't always get it done for you. You got to have coaching too. You got to have players that make plays, but you got to have coaches that put you in a position to make plays. But I like Alabama to take down Florida State. Alabama A&M is at Arkansas. Is it really worthy of discussion? But I think it's one of those things too. You begin to ask yourself, how many games can Arkansas win? And we talked about that last year. Was 6 going to be enough? Would 6 wins be enough for Sam Pittman to save his job? Now, they love Sam up there. They do. And I enjoy watching his press conferences, too. He's kind of a Mississippi State guy, right? He's just kind of, you could see, like, sitting down and having, catfish dinner with Sam. Could you not see Sam walking around the Neshoba County Fair, taking pictures and shaking hands and glad-handing everybody? Of course you could. And I think that's one of the reasons that maybe we like him so much. He kind of reminds us of our favorite uncle. But Arkansas, they're kind of tired of struggling. There's some truth there. He was a surprising hire when they hired him, and then, of course, some things went well for a while, then they didn't. People wanted him fired. We went up there and beat him in 2023. Some people thought he'd be fired before the end of the week. Yurachek and those guys decided to stick with him. Kind of rebounds a little bit last year. I think he's going to need more this year. They'll demolish Alabama A&M. But how many wins? It's going to be enough. I don't know. Illinois State's at Oklahoma. Oklahoma ranked number 18. And I'll be honest with you, I don't get the hype with Oklahoma. I've seen some people say that there may even be like a dark horse to make the playoffs, and I just want a Jim Mora of that whole thing, right? Playoffs? You kidding me? They're just trying to win a game. I just don't see it. They'll win this one as well. They should, and if they don't, goodness, I think it's pretty obvious that that staff is coaching for their jobs this year, and rightfully so. It's Oklahoma, but I think they're ranked number 18. I think partly because kind of a PR campaign, but it's one of those things you look at. Athletically, Oklahoma should be one of the elite teams in the league. I think in some respects maybe they hid in the Big 12 for a long time. I know that it's kind of a score-em league. They spread you out and try to score a bunch of points. In the SEC, you got elite defensive players. Maybe not so much in the Big 12. Texas San Antonio's at A&M. And A&M, again, we're picking them 8-4. They're preseason number 19. They're going to be interesting offensively, I think. I think they are. They should be able to run the football. They should be pretty good on defense, but I don't think they're going to be elite. And so, yeah, Texas, San Antonio, they should be able to take care of them. But UTSA, the Roadrunners, hey, they could surprise some people too. Long Island at Florida, we talked about that on Wednesday a little bit too. I mean, Florida's going to win this game and cover without any trouble whatsoever. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Charleston Southern at Vanderbilt. What I think about this game, I think Vandy wins without any problem. But I think it may prove to be more of a game than people anticipate because Charleston Southern is one of those ball control offenses, and I think they'll keep Vanderbilt on the sidelines a little bit. And so don't be surprised if you look up at the half and this thing is interesting. LSU at Clemson. I picked LSU to win this game. And partially because I just think LSU man-to-man on paper is better. And I understand it's a road game, but it's also a statement game for LSU. Brian Kelly and those guys have struggled so much when it comes to winning openers. It's become a thing. And when it becomes a thing, it gets your focus. Maybe it sneaks up on you for a couple years, but now it's become like a recurring theme. And so I think LSU... And I know Garrett Nussmeier had his little knee thing. He's going to be fine. I look for LSU to come out and play very motivated. I think LSU may prove to be better than some people anticipate. And, yes, I know they're preseason number 9. But nobody's really expecting them to challenge for the SEC. I don't think they win it. But I do think they probably go into the last couple of weeks of the season in contention to make the title game. I think that's probably fair. Georgia State's at Ole Miss. Now, Dave Murray picked Georgia State to cover. I'm taking Ole Miss home. Georgia State was terrible last year. I don't think they can slow them down. There has been some concern privately, kind of getting out there in industry circles, that there is some concern about that Ole Miss personnel group. And, of course, they're preseason number 21. And they should take a step back because they lost so much from last year. Obviously, you lose Jackson Dart and you lose some very talented players on defense. And now here you are, right? So they won't have any trouble this week. But there are reportedly some depth concerns about that team. That's just something to watch. And then Virginia Tech at South Carolina on Sunday to kind of wrap up our weekend. So, again, SEC football Thursday through Sunday. It's the Beamer Bowl. South Carolina preseason 13. I think that's a tad high. I do think they're a really good team. And I think when you begin to kind of work through the schedule, we did our preview with them, there are a lot of games that make a lot of sense. South Carolina, that's going to be an afternoon game on Sunday. But when you start working through that South Carolina football schedule, you kind of begin to realize that there are some things that could happen for them this year that don't ordinarily happen for the Gamecocks. We'll take a quick look at that. You get this Virginia Tech win, and you should. You get South Carolina State. Then you host Vanderbilt. Time has not been determined, but that's one of those games, too. If you're Shane Beamer, you can ill afford to lose. You got to win that game. Then you got to go to Missouri. Bit of a toss-up game, you would think. South Carolina should have the better quarterback, and as we've discussed many times on the show, it's become almost a mantra. It doesn't matter if it's peewees or the pros. Typically in toss-up games, the team with the best quarterback wins. So that could be interesting, but let's count that as a loss. And, of course, Beamer and those guys have had their troubles in Lexington. Well, they get them at home this year in Columbia. And so all of a sudden you look up, and even if they drop that road game in Missouri, they're 4-1 when they travel to Baton Rouge. Right? I think we would probably say it's probably a loss. But, again, good quarterbacks can keep you in games, but environments, of course, can choke you out of them. Then you got Oklahoma coming in, and then Alabama. So you got a stretch there where you got top 20 opponents. It's probably going to define your season. Probably could get Oklahoma. Don't know so much about Alabama. Then you got to go to Ole Miss, and then to A&M, and then you finish up with Coastal and then Clemson. Both of those games at home. And so when you begin to kind of lay out this schedule, you got 4 road games. That's it. 4 road games. And, of course, they're all in the SEC. So it's a very favorable schedule. And, again, that defining stretch, of course, comes in October. You get the open date after Kentucky before LSU, and it's LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama. Now, what kind of shape physically will they be in when they head to Oxford? And for that matter, what shape will Ole Miss be in by the time South Carolina gets there? Those are the things that we always kind of think about and talk about, And so it'll be an interesting season for Shane. I think Shane's done enough to validate the fact that he was hired, and I think there are a lot of people there that like Shane. And I think there are a lot of people that are rooting for Shane to make it because he does work so incredibly hard, and it's evident, and he's become a really good recruiter. And a lot of people believe that, his quarterback, Lenore Sellers, could be the quarterback of the year in the Southeastern Conference. So how they manage those expectations will be awfully interesting. But again, ranked really high this year to start a season. So they're getting some respect nationally. Can they kind of cash in? So that's how I see it all playing out. And again, really quickly, we'll just run back your winners here. No additional commentary. So we're going to go Missouri, Baylor, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Texas, Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, of course Florida, overrated at 15, Vanderbilt, LSU, Ole Miss, South Carolina. So we do have a few road teams winning. So, but there's always that game around the country. There's always that one game that nobody sees coming. When like the Louisiana school for the deaf finds a way like to beat Texas A&M. There's always that one, right? There's always that, like when App State went to the Big House and beat Michigan. Every year there seems to be some crazy game where some highly rated team is at home and hosting a school that didn't really have any business being on the field with them, but somehow they find a way to win. That's what makes college football so much fun for us. And so I expect us to go take care of business. And I am a fan of chaos as long as it doesn't involve us. And that's what I think about. That's what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for Mississippi State, Georgia State, and then absolute chaos. That's what I want. And, of course, Georgia State, as bad as they were last year, that would certainly qualify as a game, even though Ole Miss not ranked exceptionally high, would be a game that would be memorable for sure. And I don't know if you saw this too. Ole Miss recently added Jacksonville State to the schedule. Do you remember the last time Ole Miss played Jacksonville State? Do you remember that? Do you remember it? Cody Blanchard, former Mississippi State baseball commitment, led Jacksonville State to a win in Oxford. That was kind of the beginning of the end of the Houston Nutt era. But anyway, beware Jacksonville State. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Just Google the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. You'll be glad you did. You can peruse their Facebook page and see all the amenities available to you and your guest. That full-service kitchen, the wet bar, the back porch area, the fire pit area. 6 bedrooms, 2. I misspoke. The third bathroom's not quite operational yet, but don't let that slow you down. You'll be glad you stayed there. Plenty of parking. So when you're bringing a large group to town, that's one thing you have to worry about, right? When you go get something, you get a place like that, sometimes there's not enough room for all your guests. No worries at the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Plenty of parking. It's the old renovated clubhouse at the old country club out past the Highlands, just 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. It is an outstanding place, and the pictures don't even do it justice. You owe it to yourself to plan a stay at the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Now, you can stay by yourself if you want. I would recommend, though, putting that full facility to use and fill all those bedrooms with people that you know and love and just have a great time. Super time, right? A couple neighbors out there, we don't want you throwing a rager, but plenty of peace and quiet for you and your guests. Now, once you Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse, you're going to get some booking options. You can go the Airbnb or the VRBO route. Maybe you've got a credit. I don't know. But if you don't, book through the Evolve website and we'll give you one. Promo code BSR10. That's beautiful Steve Robertson, the number 10, BSR10, gets you 10% off your stay. Yeah, just by listening to this show, you're getting a discount at the premium place to stay in Starkville, the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. All right, we got some recruiting news today. One of our astute posters over at Gene's page noticed that Frizzell Shepard was on the Mississippi State roster. So we make some phone calls. We find out, yes, Yes, and so let me give you a little bit of the backstory here on Ferzell. He committed to State in June of 24 during an official visit. We knew that there was some academic concerns, right? You want to get everybody in January if you can. We knew there were some. He ended up being a late qualifier. Now, he did not sign with State in December. We thought once, maybe those fall grades come in, it would put him within striking distance. That wasn't the case, but he worked really hard in the spring. He's able to qualify, right? So, again, he decommits from State back in February just before the traditional national signing day. But rather than just say, you know what, hey, I've done all I can do, I'm going to go to junior college, he kept working. State ends up having a scholarship available. We sign him. Now, no summer workouts, no preseason camp. He is nowhere near ready to play, so he is working on the scout team. There was a report somebody shared with me earlier that he wasn't eligible to be involved in team activities. That's not correct. He is enrolled and got certified, I think, August the 18th, and then took a few days, but he got in time. And so that's a 247 Sports 4-star receiver that we've added to the class. And he'll redshirt this year, right? He will redshirt this year, and that's a good thing for him. Give him the chance to acclimate to life and times in the SEC. Give him an opportunity to kind of get ahead academically. And so it's a great thing. I mean, it super is. And that's the thing that I begin to think about, too, is like this is a guy, when he committed, we were jacked, and we were hoping LSU wouldn't circle back to him. He's right there, Baton Rouge, Scotlandville High School. And they didn't. Now, he did commit to Texas San Antonio back in March. However, he was still a recruitable athlete after he qualified. Continues to have conversations with Chad Bumpus, and now here he is. Now he is a part of your football program. Some unexpected good news, and super excited about that. He's a great young man. You guys are really going to dig him. And I can tell you, Scotlandville High School is, it's not the best, okay? And they put a magnet program there to kind of help average out some of the test scores and things like that because it was a failing school. I've coached against them in baseball. Back before I had all this hair, I was a high school baseball coach. And there have been times I had to go over there and help line the field. I mean, honest to goodness. And Coach is great, don't get me wrong, but they didn't have a ton of resources, and there was a lot going on there, and so they were kind of a sister school to us, and so we did what we could to kind of help out when we played them. Played them at our place. We played them in tournaments around the great state of Louisiana, mainly around Baton Rouge Metro, but also played them at their place. But that's kind of the background of where he's coming from, right? That's a school that they don't have a lot of positive things kind of going in their direction. And so my hope is that Ferzell Shepard comes here and does exceptionally well and then motivates those kids from Scotlandville High School to say, hey, yes, you can do it. Yes, you can do it. We may not have the most resources. We may not have the best facilities, but if you work hard and take care of your academics, you do have the ability to play major college football. So great development there. And again, don't expect to see him this year. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen. But we're glad that he's here this understudy year in our strength and conditioning program, working with our coaches and kind of getting ready for next year. And again, working scout team, he'll get some good reps. And working scout team, he'll be against the ones and the twos. So it'll be some serious competition. And it kind of brings you the value of the scout team. It raises the value of the scout team to have a 247 Sports 4-star receiver on the scout team, right? I tell you an interesting note, too, speaking of the scout team. I had somebody share something with me earlier today because I was chasing this story, right? It's interesting how life works sometimes, right? We always talked about that last year, right? That, Jeff Lubby brought it up. We sometimes couldn't even get a quality scout. Well, what's interesting is, Parker Puckett, and some people call him Billy. I think that's what most people call him, Billy Puckett. They tell me he is an absolutely outstanding scout team quarterback. Now, he's a freshman walk-on, 6 foot, 180. But this person tells me he is not your typical scout quarterback, that we are getting a great scout. And I wondered, how do you kind of replicate, what Braxton's going to do from Southern Miss? And they tell me that Billy Puckett, we'll call him Billy, nickname's Billy. His mama named him Parker, but it's listed as Billy. But they tell me that he has embraced this role and has really kind of invigorated that scout team. That's probably some news you didn't expect to hear today, but you're probably glad you heard it. Last year we're having to move guys around and put tight ends in a defensive end position just to get a look at scout. And now all of a sudden you got a 4-star receiver and you've got a real gutsy quarterback. It's like, hey, this is my role on the team. I'm going to embrace this. This is what I can do to help get my team ready to play on Saturday. It's outstanding, man. It is. It's absolutely outstanding. And I don't know if we have ever shouted out the scout team quarterback on this show, but we're going to do it today. When people in that building share these kinds of things with me, and I know they've got many of you may have friends or family connected to that family, I think it's important you know about these things. This is a young man that may never take a snap at Mississippi State. I don't know. I don't know what his future holds, but I know this. The fact that he is embracing this role and kind of taking ownership of that scout team offense, that's for the betterment of your football team. I love it, man. I do. I love it. And again, we just got to shout it out. Now, we're going to have unofficial visitors next weekend. I am sure that there will be some junior prospects and maybe some 26 guys that'll be in Hattiesburg this weekend that'll see us play. And I think it's so important for us to go make a good showing, right? I think one of the things that we've got to get over as a fan base is the PTSD of last year. Okay, it's a new year. It's a pretty much new roster. A lot of the core position guys are back, especially on offense, as you guys are well aware. So I expect us to be able to score. And I asked somebody, I remember last year, there was one particular person who's still around, told me last year about 2 weeks before we played Eastern Kentucky. They said, but a lot of people are expecting this offense to go out there and light it up, but I just don't know if that's really the case. And then we go just destroy Eastern Kentucky, as we should. And then it took us a little while to kind of get going again. And so I asked him, I said, hey, you told me last year that this offense maybe wasn't up to expectations. What are your thoughts now? He said, we're dramatically better on both sides of the line. Dramatically better with our skill people. And said last year at times, you had 3 or 4 receivers you kind of counted on. They think that number may swell to 6 or 7 this year. And the more guys you can rotate, the happier your locker room's going to be, the more difficult you're going to be to defend, and you're going to keep a lot of people happy in that huddle. Those are the things that, the little nuances of running a team or managing a group of people. Morale's a big part of it. When guys can't get on the field, what do? They go get in the portal. And I talked to somebody too. We wrote about Charles Huff earlier this week about they didn't want to give a depth chart. It really had nothing to do with us. He said some things kind of in jest, but it had nothing to do with us. He's like, hey, I just want to get through a game. Tennessee didn't put out a depth chart either. I don't know if you knew that. And talking to some people around the league, a lot of people are like, hey, I don't want to put out that the guy's going to run second team, or perhaps he's not even listed on the 2 deep. And then I got to deal with calls from agents and parents all week long as we're preparing for the season opener. Let me get through the weekend and let these guys play. Let them get on the field and make some type of contribution. And then we'll put a depth chart out there next week because the kids will understand how we're going to utilize them this year, at a minimum. He said if we put it out right now, there are going to be many of those agents that say, don't even lock in. I'll start looking for the place for you. And there's a lot of people involved in this process that shouldn't be, and that's something that's got to get fixed. But, my final thoughts about this, people always ask for a score. I think State's going to win this thing by 3 or more touchdowns. I do. I think it's probably a game for a half, maybe a quarter and a half. I think they'll come out. They'll be jacked, as they should be. It's probably going to be close to a 50-50 crowd. There'll be a lot of Bulldogs there. And again, there's still thousands of tickets available. You don't need to delay too much, but you should be okay. But eventually, it's not magic, it's math, right? And mass. When you've got people that are 325, 326 pounds leaning on you and driving you back over and over and over, eventually it tests your depth and it tests your will to win. Now, I know that Southern Miss understands what's at stake. They're going to come out and give us their best effort. As I've shared for 2 weeks now, they'll probably fake punts and onside kicks, and they got nothing to lose in this game other than a game that they're already, expected to lose. They're going to come out and do some things. I don't think they get too crazy. And as Jeff Lebby says, you don't want to get caught up chasing ghosts. There's some truth in that too. You just play good fundamental football, play good assignment football, you should be okay. But all that understood, Mississippi State on paper and I think on the field is going to prove to be a much improved team. I think Southern Miss will too. But Mississippi State is a year ahead. What Coach Huff and those guys have had to do is what Jeff Lebby had to do last year, right? When he got here at the end of 2023, you hit the ground running. You got to start working the portal. Now, the difference is he was able to bring 21 kids from Marshall. 2 of them eventually left the program. But the bulk of that class came from Marshall. And then you had some other guys you had some relationships with. So in some respects, they were kind of ahead of where Lebby was in 23. But the reality of it is no matter who you are or where you're from, the first game is difficult, especially when you're the underdog, especially when you're the new coach. Because what's going to happen, you run all these plays in practice, and the clock's not really running, the crowd's not paying attention, the band's not playing, and then all of a sudden you get out there and the emotions get the better of you. All of a sudden you're getting ready to punt, and you run 10 out there. Or you're getting ready to kick off, and you got 10 out there. Or you got 12 out there. Or you have a guy that doesn't understand the count. Or somebody that runs the wrong route. You don't really know what you have until you play an actual opponent. There's so many teachable moments in that first game, win or lose, because operationally you're just getting up to speed. It's like, well, we practiced to prepare for this game, but until you play the game, you don't know how those guys are going to respond. You don't. You don't know how they're going to treat each other. You don't know how cohesive they're going to be. And again, I expect State to win this game. We can't win it by enough to satisfy some people, right? Because let's say we go up there and beat them 45-17, which I think is possible. But let's say we do. There'll be some people will go back and regurgitate what we just talked about. And say, well, I know I expected it to be a close game, but, State won big, but it's Huff and those guys' first year. That's true. But let's kind of pick a horse and ride with it, right? Let's don't sit here and say we may lose the game and then try to find a way to be right if we win it big. I want to go win the ball game, but I also want to win this game and look like we know what we're doing. And I believe we do. And I think that's going to be evident. And again, Josh Moten is a real deal, and so you can't get loose and fast with him because he will pick it off. He absolutely will. The guy's an NFL player. So you got to be smart. You got to get some matchups that work for you. And I think Brennan Thompson and Anthony Evans are going to have big games for us. I think Davin Booth's going to have good games. I expect State to come out, try to establish the run. If there's a shot there, I'm sure they'll take it. But I think you want to go ahead and kind of start winning this war of attrition along the line of scrimmage, if that makes sense. If you haven't done so, go to dutynoblebook.com and you can get a signed copy of all of my sports titles, plus When the Bottom Falls. Had some people buy it today. Reached out to me and said, hey, I bought this book today, excited to read it. Very excited for you to read it. I eagerly await your review. Again, visit Duty Noble Book, and again, all the sports titles are there. There's always a reason to share knowledge and for us to kind of support each other too. A lot of people are already calling to make their plans for next weekend to float at True West Floats by Starkville. Of course, that's our business. My wife runs it. You can speak to her directly. You can schedule online, or you can call her at 662-268-7601. She'll answer any questions you may have. That's what she does all day, every day, run the float spa. And we could hire people, but she just loves it so much and loves the clients. She's just kind of running the show, and of course she has a little backup from time to time. But the reality of it is this is a mom and pop shop, and mom enjoys being in wellness. Simple as that. And she believes in the power of floating. And so if you're a person that perhaps suffers from chronic anxiety or maybe chronic pain, or you just need a mental reset or perhaps a break, we may be able to help you. We've helped many others. So we encourage you to come float at True Rest Float Spa Starboard. And reminder, 75% off an annual subscription. It's the best deal we've ever done at genespage.com. Of course, that gets you basically to kick off of next year. Again, 75% off. What could be better than that? You've always thought about it, or maybe you've left and want to come back. Now you can do it at a huge discount. We'd love to have you back. We'd love to have you be a part of our merry band of misfits. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.